Chapter 1. The Awakening of Ashes. The sky hung heavy. A broken canopy of weeping clouds that seemed to bleed darkness onto the battered earth below. The land of Ebonreach had once been a thriving realm, a citadel of power and arcane might. But now, all was fractured, shattered beyond recognition, consumed by shadows that clung to every ruin and ruinous fortress. The wind carried a mournful dirge, whispering secrets long lost to time, secrets that dared not be spoken aloud. In the heart of the desolation, the remnants of a once mighty city sprawled like carcasses of dormant beast towers without spires. Bridges fallen into specters of their former grandeur, streets cracked and smoldering as if burned by the very hopes of its people. Here, darkness clung to every corner, whispering tales of betrayal, curse, and ruin. Amidst the decay in the shadowed depths of the void realm cloisters, an ancient figure stirred. His name was Melric, known in legends as a forsaken sorcerer who had delved too deep into the abyss of forbidden magics. His eyes, hollow and glowing faintly with a sickly green, reflected a harrowing history of failed power and shattered dreams. He was hunched, draped in tattered robes stained with ash. Yet beneath that guise lay a mind sharper than a dagger, awareness of the darkness creeping from the distant horizons, eager to consume everything. Malric's muttering voice echoed softly among the broken columns, a dark hymn of desperation and dread. It awakens, it awakens. As he spoke, the ground beneath him trembled a subtle quiver at first, then a shudder that grew into an earthquake of dread. The very earth seemed to mourn as a crack formed in the stone floor, revealing a deep, fathomless abyss glowing with an unnatural light. From its depths, a faint, ominous pulse rippled outward like a heartbeat, faint but relentless. Malric staggered back, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fascination. The ashes. They stir once more. For centuries, the darkness had been sealed beneath the Cydia containment spell cast by the ancients before their doom. It was a prison, a safeguard, but recent circumstances had weakened its bonds. Rumors spread that whispers of old dark powers had begun to stir within the shadows, beckoning the fading remnants of the old evil hungry for release. Suddenly, the abyss pulsed violently, flashes of crimson and obsidian tearing through its shadowy depths. From within, an ancient presence awoke something that had been dormant since the fall of Ebonreach, waiting, biding time in the silence. Malric's hand, gripping a fractured talisman, trembled. The air thickened as an oppressive aura spread, pressing down upon the broken city, corrupting what little remained of its soul. It was a warning sign that the darkness was nearly free. Outside, the first echoes of chaos stirred on the surface. Shadows flickered like dying flames, and the faint howling of distant beasts pierced the silence. Malric knew no one could stop what was coming now, the dawn of the Shadowfall, the cursed event that would reawaken the forgotten terror. His voice, hoarse but resolute, whispered a single vow amidst the collapse of hope. Before the darkness consumes Ebonreach, I will unearth the truth. I will awaken what must never rise. The shadow deepened, cloaking the ruined city in an eternal night, as the ancient evil within stirred eagerly for what was to come. Chapter 2. The Bleeding Sigil. The dawn never truly came to Ebonreach anymore. Instead, the ceaseless night persisted, a suffocating shroud that hung like a curse over the crumbling remains of the forsaken city. The shadows deepened, transforming into whispers and flickers of movement that only the desperate or the damned dared to perceive. In the ruins of the old citadel, nestled among broken battlements and ruined towers, a lone figure moved silent, cautious, like a ghost among the bones of a fallen empire. Her name was Seraphine, once a healer, now a seeker of forbidden truths. She shrouded herself in a tattered cloak. She was driven by whispers, voices caught in the wind, calling her to the heart of the darkness, promising answers that might save or doom her. The sigil, etched into her palm, throbbed with pain and power. A bleeding rune woven into a ritual not fully understood, its crimson ink seeping into her veins, threatening to drown her in a tide of madness or enlightenment. She halted before a cracked stone altar upon which sat the remnants of an ancient scroll encrusted with ash and moss. Its symbols shimmered faintly under the weak light, flickering like dying stars. Seraphine reached out, trembling fingers tracing the faded glyphs. She had come here seeking knowledge, answers to the curse that plagued Ebonreach, to the whispered legends of the Shadow King who once wielded the darkness beyond. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted. The sigil in her hand grew hotter, burning as if alive. The air thickened with a sickening scent of sulfur and decay. Shadows rolled towards her, tangible and hungry, as if the very darkness sought to claim her soul. A voice barked out from the gloom, raspy, gravelly intonation that sent shivers through her bones. Foolish girl, you dare wake what should slumber forever. Seraphine spun around, clutching her talisman tightly. Her eyes widened as a towering figure emerged from the shadows, an ancient sentinel draped in armor black as the void, crowned with twisted horns, eyes burning with malevolent intelligence. He was the last warden, the keeper of the void seal, charged with imprisoning the darkness that now threatened to overflow. His voice was hollow, yet thunderous. The sigil you carry is a wound, a bleeding gate. It calls forth the hunger of the damned. Turn back while you still can. But Seraphine's resolve had already hardened. She knew that silence would only lengthen the suffering, that the only way to stop the impending doom was to confront the source behind the curse. She drew her dagger, the blade etched with runes of her own making, and declared, "I seek the truth, I seek the source. If the darkness awakens then, so shall I." The warden's eyes narrowed, and he lifted a hand, summoning a wave of shadow that threatened to drown her. Yet Seraphine stepped forward, her sigil bleeding brighter, revealing a fragment of ancient power buried within her bloodline. And the shadows recoiled, hesitating, as if recognizing her as more than just a mortal girl. The ground trembled beneath them, splitting further, exposing a deep chasm of swirling darkness, the true heart of the evil that now bled into the world. In that abyss, unseen, an immense, terrible presence stirred, awakening from its slumber. A voice, like 1,000 whispers, echoed from the depths. The night is coming, and with it, the end of all light. Chapter 3: The Awakening of the Void. The chasm yawned, open like the maw of some ancient beast, its swirling shadows stretching upward with a hunger that threatened to devour the very world. The stench of decay and unseen horrors seeped from the abyss, and the air grew thick with the whispers of the damned, chorus of despair echoing through the ruins of Ebonreach. Seraphine faltered but remained steady, clutching her sigil as if it were her last anchor to reality. Her heart hammered in her chest, a ragged drumbeat of fear and defiance. She could feel the dark presence stirring beneath the earth ancient, slumbering terror whose very name had been cursed in forgotten tongues. The shadowy figure of the warden moved protectively before her, raising a shield of blackened light as tendrils of darkness surged toward them like waves crashing on a forsaken shore. Fear is the weapon of the damned. The warden growled, voice hollow yet potent. The ancient evil awakens, and it hungers for your soul. We must seal the abyss, or this world will drown in eternal night. But Seraphine knew that words alone would not suffice. She could feel the blood runes carved into her palm, burning with an unholy energy, a sign that her bloodline carried the cursed legacy of the void-bound, those who had once been consumed by darkness, but had survived long enough to learn its secrets. As she gazed into the depths of the abyss, she saw visions of civilizations fallen, worlds consumed, kings and queens pleading for salvation, only to be swallowed by shadows that had no mercy. The darkness was not merely an enemy, but a force of nature, inevitable and relentless. A sudden shockwave ruptured the ground beneath their feet. The void answered the call of the sigil's bleeding power, erupting outward in a wave of destructive energy. Shadows billowed like smoke, coalescing into a colossal silhouette, the figure of the Shadow King himself, a deity of darkness that had long been imprisoned in myth and nightmare. His voice emanated from the darkness, a whisper that clawed into their minds. The time has come. The light has failed. All that remains is shadow, eternal and unyielding. Seraphine clutched her talisman tighter, feeling the weight of her destiny settle upon her shoulders. She knew that she was not just an innocent seeking answers, but a vessel bound to forces beyond comprehension. The Shadow King extended a limb shrouded in darkness, and the world around them began to distort. Reality wavering as the very fabric of existence threatened to unravel. Behind her, the warden vanished into the shadows, sacrificing himself to buy her time. Alone now, Seraphine faced the blackened maw of the abyss, her voice trembling yet resolute. I will not let darkness consume this land. No matter what, I will fight for the light, no matter how faint it may burn. As her words echoed, a brilliant flare of arcanic power erupted from her sigil, her own will break against the abyssal darkness. And in that moment, she glimpsed a fragment of a truth buried in legend, the key to sealing the void forever, but at a cost that might be her very soul. The shadows recoiled as the abyss roared in defiance, and the first true dawn of the Dark Age threatened to be born. Chapter 4. The Echoes of Lost Souls. The very earth seemed to scream beneath her feet, the fabric of reality rippling with the raw power of the abyss. Seraphine staggered, her breath ragged, eyes burning with a desperate resolve, as the shadowed figure of the Shadow King loomed over her. A vast and unyielding silhouette woven from centuries of nightmares. In that moment, the air thickened with despair and anger, ancient, oppressive weight that threatened to crush her spirit. Shadows reached outward like tendrils of despair, clawing at her mind, whispering dark secrets forgotten by time. The sigil in her palm flickered erratically, bleeding brilliance into the gloom like a dying star. She knew she could not hold it much longer. The darkness was too immense, too hungry. You cannot stop what has already begun, the Shadow King hissed. His voice was a rasping wind, echoing from the depths of eternity. The age of light has faded. The only truth now is shadow. Embrace it and be consumed. But Seraphine's heart hardened. She had fought long enough against the cold silence of despair. With every breath she drew, she clung to a fragile hope, the hope that the darkness could be banished. that her bloodline held a secret that could undo centuries of cursed history. Suddenly, amidst the shadows, echoes of lost souls emerged, distorted whispers that haunted her mind like vengeful ghosts. They were the voices of those who had fallen before her, their spirits ensnared in eternal torment, their cries echoing in an endless chorus of suffering. Her knees buckled, and she fell to the dirt-stained ground, clutching her head as the whispers grew louder, a symphony of agony and betrayal. She saw their faces, warriors, scholars, children, each one fading into the abyss, their eyes hollow yet pleading. "Help us," one voice begged, trembling with desperation. "We are the forgotten, the forsaken." To her horror, she realized that the darkness had already begun to claim her own soul. The blood runes in her hand shimmered with malevolent light, a testament to the curse that coursed through her veins, a bond that linked her fate to the shadows. A sudden surge of energy erupted from her, fueled by fury, grief, and an unyielding desire to survive. With a cry that echoed through the wreckage, she raised her hand, unleashing a burst of arcane light that cut through the darkness like a blade. The shadows recoiled, but they were not defeated. They ebbed, swirling like a storm on the brink of engulfing her entirely. From the depths of the void, the voice of the Shadow King returned, colder and more accusing. "A foolish mortal clings to hope, but hope is a fragile thing. It shatters beneath true darkness." Seraphine's vision blurred, her mind teetering between despair and resolve. The whispers of the lost souls grew louder, their voices merging into a single haunting chorus. "Find the source. Uncover the lie. Free us." Her heart pounding like a dying drum, Seraphine grasped her talisman, tightly sensing that the answer, her salvation or her doom, lay in the ruins of the forgotten vault, a place whispered about in legends. Once a sanctuary of knowledge, now a prison for horrors beyond imagination. The only question remaining: could she withstand the darkness long enough to uncover the truth? And if she did, what dark secrets would she unleash? Chapter 5: The Lies Beneath the Dust. The earth beneath Seraphine's trembling feet seemed to pulse with a sinister rhythm, echoing the beat of her racing heart. The city's ruin stretched endlessly around her, twisted spires, cracked and fallen, statues shattered like broken dreams. The shadows clung to every corner, whispering secrets that chilled her to the bone. Her breathing was ragged, her body aching from the effort of resisting the overwhelming darkness. In her hand, the bleeding sigil thrummed with a ravenous hunger, as if eager to devour whatever secrets lay hidden beneath the ash and ruin. She knew she had to find the forgotten vault, the legendary repository of forbidden knowledge that might hold the key to ending the Shadow King rising power. Legends told that it was sealed deep within the heart of the city, hidden beneath layers of wards and curses, guarded by nightmares made flesh. But the vault was no ordinary place. It was a prison built to contain truths so terrible that even the shadows dared not disturb them. And Seraphine understood that unlocking it would come at a terrible cost. Darkness pressed in on her from all sides, tendrils seeking to ensnare her, whispering lies and false truths. As her vision blurred, she saw visions of the past heroes fallen, kings betrayed. Civilizations turned to dust stream, minding her of what was at stake. A sudden gust of wind swept through the city, carrying with it a terrible realization. The Shadow King was not merely awakening. He was preparing to reshape the world in his own dread image. Behind her, the ruins shifted an ancient door, half buried beneath centuries of dirt and dread, began to groan open. Hidden beneath layers of fallen stones and cursed spells, a maw of darkness yawned wide, beckoning her forward. With hesitant steps, Seraphine pressed on, my mind shattered by visions of lies and betrayals. Her hope was fragile, almost as fragile as the dust-laden memories she sifted through. Inside the vault, darkness was waiting. The chamber was vast, carved from black stone, its walls covered with runes that shimmered faintly with cursed power. In the center stood an altar, crowned with a stone scullion, ancient relic pulsating with dark energy. Seraphine approached cautiously, sensing that the secrets she sought might be a trap. But there was no turning back now. The shadows had already claimed too much, and she alone carried the weight of their secrets. As she reached out to touch the relic, a voice echoed in her mind, a whisper of lies spun to hide a terrible truth. It was the voice of the architect of the vault, an ancient sorcerer whose name had been erased from history. You seek truth, but truth is a lie, it hissed. All you will find here are lies designed to keep you blind. She knew the dangers. She had already glimpsed the darkness that lurked beneath the lies. But she also understood that the greatest peril lay in ignorance, in letting the Shadow King's darkness consume everything. Steeling herself, she lifted the relic, and the chamber erupted in a tempest of shadows and whispers. The secrets of the vault caressed her mind, visions of a terrible deception, a betrayal woven into the very fabric of Ebonreach's history. The dark truth was that the Shadow King was not merely a creature of chaos, but a pawn, a tool used by a greater power that thrived on the bloodshed and suffering, and that the source of his resurrection was tied to an even darker gifta, curse that had bound her own bloodline to the curse of the shadows. The whispers grew louder, tearing at her mind. The greatest lie was that hope and light could save her. And still, she clung to the fragile hope that somewhere within this darkness lay the truth she desperately needed. Chapter 6. The Price of Revelation. The darkness within the vault clawed at Seraphine's mind, threatening to drown her in a flood of lies and memories not her own. Shadows twisted and writhed around her, whispering promises of power, of forbidden knowledge, of escape from the relentless despair that had consumed Ebonreach. Her vision blurred, her breath shallow, yet her hands trembled as she clutched the cursed relic fragment of a truth so terrible that even the shadows recoiled from revealing it outright. In the midst of the chaos, a voice echoed in her mind, a cold, calculating presence, ancient and unyielding. It was the voice of the architect of the vault, the one who had sealed away secrets too vile to bear. You seek the truth, but every truth bears a blood price. Are you willing to pay it? Her knees buckled, and she sank to the ground, trembling, tears stinging her eyes. She realized that the curse was not simply a burden, but a banda chain-linking her to the darkness that had already claimed so many others. The curse, it was born from the shadowed bloodline she carried, an inheritance of betrayal and suffering, woven into her very essence. The blood runes etched into her palm were not just symbols of power, but a seal that kept her tethered to the Shadow King's prison. And in that moment of clarity, she understood the terrible truth. The Shadow King's resurrection was not merely an act of chaos, but a symptom of a greater, insidious plan. He was upon himself, not just an agent of darkness, but a manifestation of a far darker purpose. The revival of an ancient god of ruin, Ka, a primordial force older than the shadows, whose name had long been erased from memory. A terrible realization struck her. The only way to truly end the darkness was to sever this cursed bloodline, to destroy the link that tethered her existence to the very evil she sought to eradicate. But the price was beyond anyone's imagining. To break the curse, she would have to sacrifice everything: her hope, her future, perhaps even her soul. There is no salvation without sacrifice, whispered the shadows. Her hand clenched around the relic, the symbols glowing with an unholy light. She knew her choice, the only way to vanquish the darkness forever, was to embrace the pain, to pay the price demanded by the shadows. And so she made her decision. With trembling resolve, she invoked the ancient words carved into her mind, calling upon the blood and despair woven into her veins. The shadows responded, twisting and writhing as her very essence began to unravel. A searing pain engulfed her like fiery chains, tearing through her body, soul, and memories. Her screams echoed across the ruined city, a plea for salvation that would not be granted. And in that final, agonizing moment, she understood. True freedom came at the cost of her humanity, of everything she was, everything she hoped to be. She was no longer a girl seeking answers, a sacrifice for a dawn that would never come. As the shadows closed in and the relic shattered, her consciousness faded into the abyss. Her last sight, the cursed glow of the secrets she had unraveled. And the shadows laughed. Chapter 7. The Dawn of Shadows, silent and still. The ruins of Ebonreach lay beneath a sky shrouded in perpetual gloom. The shattered remnants of the city seemed to breathe a ghostly sigh, as if mourning their fallen hopes and dreams. In the depths of the darkness, the remnants of Seraphine's sacrifice resonated, sending ripples through the tethers that bound the shadow realm to the mortal world. The curse she bore had been sealed at a terrible cost. But darkness, like a beast wounded, recoiled only temporarily. Its hunger was insatiable, and the death of one shadow could only make room for newer, darker horrors to emerge. A new shadow rises in the deepest corner of the ruined city. The broken fragments of the vault pulsed with a faint, malignant glow. From the shattered relics, whispers of a new shadow seeped out, a veiled menace that sought to reclaim the darkness for itself. Unbeknownst to the world, a fragment of Seraphine's soul had survived the terrible sacrifice. Bound to the void, but not destroyed, drifted, lost and silent, caught between worlds, waiting for an opportunity to return. Far away from Ebonreach, in an old forgotten temple, a figure cloaked in tattered robes knelt before an altar carved with the same cursed symbols, the same symbols that had once sealed the Shadow King. A new cult, perhaps born from despair or ambition. These followers believed Seraphine's sacrifice was an illusion, an act that merely delayed the inevitable. They whispered of awakening her spirit, of breaking the seal and unleashing the darkness anew. Within their ranks, a voice echoed with a sinister promise. The shadows are never gone. They only sleep. When the time is right, they will rise again. And so, the seeds of a new darkness were planted silent, hidden, waiting to blossom. Meanwhile, in the waking world, odd things began to happen. Shadows moved without source. Whispers followed travelers through the fog, and the moon cast an unnatural pallor over the crumbling city. A lone wanderer, an old scholar named Alden, uncovered an ancient manuscript, its pages filled with warnings of the Shadow King and a prophecy of rebirth. His eyes widened as he read the words, "When the bloodline is broken, hope shall fade, but shadows will seek the light within the darkness." Alden sensed that the darkness was not gone, but merely dormant, waiting for the right moment to strike back. And the remnants of Seraphine's defiant sacrifice had triggered a new cycle of chaos. Chapter 8. The Whispers of the Past in the Shadows of Ebonreach's Ruins. A fragile silence had fallen, a deceptive calm before the storm. But beneath the surface, unseen currents of ancient power stirred, whispering promises of chaos and salvation alike. Meanwhile, across the distance, Alden, the old scholar, carefully unfolded the ancient manuscript he had discovered. His trembling fingers traced the faded symbols and cryptic writings, shadows flickering across his wrinkled face as he read aloud. Voice hushed but resolute. The darkness slumbers but does not die. Its seed is sown in the blood of the fallen, and from its depths it shall creep again. His eyes widened as he realized the disturbing truth. Seraphine's sacrifice had bought only a temporary respite. The curse was a wound that refused to fully heal, and the shadows remained patient, waiting for their moment to strike anew. A mysterious visitor from the mist emerged, a figure cloaked in tattered robes, moving quietly but with purposeful strides. A hood obscured their face, but a faint glow emanated from a pendant at their neck, symbol of the ancient order, dedicated to guarding the balance between light and darkness. The stranger's voice was low but unwavering. The prophecy speaks true. The shadows are awakening, and history repeats itself. We must act now, or the world will be swallowed again. Alden looked up sharply, peering at the stranger's eyes, flickering with an unnatural light. "Who are you?" he asked, voice trembling with both hope and suspicion. "I am Lyra," she responded softly, "a guardian of forgotten truths." Seraphine's final act was a bikina spark that rekindled the curse. Now we must find the ones who can stand against the shadow before it's too late. A glimpse into the shadow's heart far beneath the city's ruins. Deep in the blackened chambers of an ancient crypt, a new entity stirred. The fragment of Seraphine's soul that had survived her sacrifice now fluttered like a dying ember torn between worlds, whispering secrets to those who would listen. A voice, trembling and faint, spoke from the depths. The curse was only a veil, a mask hiding the true source, hidden where the darkness first took root. In that silent darkness, a great and terrible power awoke, driven by vengeful whispers and age-old schemes. The shadows longed for freedom, not just to reclaim the city, but to drown the world in eternal night. Chapter 9. The Gathering of Shadows Under a Bleak and Stormy Sky lies, converged on the ruins of Ebonreach, their figures silhouetted against the tumultuous horizon. The air was thick with tension, hope, intertwined with dread as each brought their secrets, their fears, and their resolve to face the encroaching darkness. The Council of Lost Souls. At the heart of the ruins, Alden and Lyra stood before a gathered assembly. Scholars, wanderers, outcasts, and remnants of resistance. Those determined to resist the shadow's return. Among them, a young warrior with scarred armor, and an old woman whose eyes gleamed with unspoken knowledge. Alden unfurled a tattered map, marking the locations of ancient relics and secret sanctuaries, all vital to their desperate plan. The shadows aren't merely returning, they are evolving, he warned. They seek to override the balance, to rewrite history itself. We must find the core to banish them before they become unstoppable. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady but charged with urgency. The darkness fed on secrets long buried. We must unearth its roots in the heart of the shadow, as own prison, and confront what lurks there. The hidden threat, meanwhile, beneath the remnants of the city. A shadowy figure moved swiftly through underground passages, clad in black with eyes burning like coals. This was Malric, one of the forgotten cultists, loyal to the dark whispers still echoing in the void. He had been listening, hiding in the shadows, awaiting the moment to strike. With a quiet smirk, he clutched a sinister talisman, the very artifact that once threatened to unleash the Shadow King's full power. Soon, Malric whispered to himself, the darkness will break free. Seraphine's sacrifice was only the beginning. And with that, he disappeared into the gloom, the promise of chaos kindling in his heart. The false hope as night fell over the ruined city. Strange phenomena, intensified visions, flickering in the minds of those present, and shadows creeping where they should not be. A dark sigil appeared suddenly in the sky, shimmering with malevolent light. A symbol of the Shadow King's lingering influence. The city itself seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of shadow, echoing with whispers that said, "The darkness is not gone. It merely waits." And as the last hope flickered, so too did the line between reality and nightmare. Chapter 10. The hidden heart. The air in the labyrinth was thick and oppressive, heavy with the scent of damp stone and the unseen whispers that seemed to echo from every corner. Shadows danced along the crooked walls, flickering in the faint torchlight, twisting in sinister forms that seemed almost alive. Lyra led the way, her shoulders tense with anticipation. Her hand instinctively rested on the pendant at her neck, ancient symbol of guardianship forged from moonstone and silver, pulsing faintly with protective magic. "Avoid the traps," she murmured. "They feed on fear." Alden, the venerable scholar, moved cautiously behind her, eyeing the shadows with wary suspicion. His gray beard was damp with sweat, and his hands trembled slightly, to be expected after so many years of study and worry. The labyrinth was carved centuries ago, in a time when darkness was fought with blood and sacrifice. Its purpose, to imprison the heart of the shadow, the core that gave the darkness its terrible power. Now, that very prison had become a maze of death, a crucible forging heroes and monsters alike. The first obstacle, the Hall of Illusions, they advanced slowly, until they reached a wide chamber, unlit except for a flickering glow emanating from a mosaic etched into the floor. As soon as they stepped into the room, the walls shimmered and illusions appeared. Loved ones distorted in pain, memories turned into nightmares. Lyra's eyes widened. Her hand shot toward her belt, grasping the talisman she wore. She invoked a protective chant, and the illusions flickered, then faded, revealing the true chamber beyond. Alded frowned, rubbing his temples. These illusions prey on our fears and memories. We can't trust what we see here. We need clarity. Focus on what's real, Lyra commanded. The heart is buried beneath this maze. We can't let fear cloud our judgment. Behind them, the shadows pressed in silent, creeping, alive with hunger, the maze itself conspiring against them. The tunnel of echoes. They pressed forward into a narrow tunnel, the walls alive with faint, whispering voices. The whispers echoed in their minds, echoing past regrets and secrets long buried. Alden was the first to falter, a shadowy tendril of doubt brushing against him. Is this all worth it? The whisper said softly. Alden's face grew pale. He reached into his pocket, clutching a small amuletin ancestral token of hope. We're fighting for everyone we love, he whispered back, and for those who can't. Lyra looked back, her eyes stern. Keep moving. These whispers are used to break us. Remember your purpose. As they navigated the tunnels, they faced one final obstacle, the mirror of truth, a vast, shimmering pool that reflected not their faces, but their inner fears and hidden truths. The test of the heart, a shadowy figure appeared behind the glass, whispering seductively, "Come closer, release your pain. Tit, show me your weakness." Lyra closed her eyes, fighting the urge, while Alden hesitated, staring at his own face, marked with age and regret. But as they confronted their fears, the reflection cracked, revealing a final path ahead. The maze itself seemed to shudder, recognizing their resolve. Chapter 11. The cult's betrayal. The shadows stretched long and ominous as dawn broke over Ebonreach, casting a sickly pallor across the ruined city. The remnants of the group had camped inside what was once a grand hall, now reduced to fractured stone and splintered wood. They had made it through the labyrinth, but the threat that loomed was far from vanquished. Lyra sat nearby, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Clutching her pendant tightly, her connection to her ancestors and, perhaps, her last hope. Alden's body was laid out beneath a makeshift shelter, his face peaceful but pale, silent evidence of his sacrifice. The air was thick with exhaustion and a sense of fragile victory. But amidst that fragile hope, an insidious threat had taken root, a serpent coiling in their midst. A tense gathering. In the center of their makeshift camp, they gathered around a flickering fire, weary and tired. The group was diverse. A handful of survivors, a couple of weary warriors, and Mira, the healer who looked increasingly anxious. Lyra spoke softly, her voice steady, trying to keep everyone's fears in check. We've made progress. The relic is within reach, and the darkness is wounded. But I've seen enough. This isn't over. They will come for us again. Alden, using his last strength, had shared what little insights he had about the Shadow's core, and they had all nodded, determined to succeed. But beneath the surface, unseen and unnoticed, Malric lurked in the shadows, listening. He had been with them all along, cloaked in the guise of loyalty. But Ivy's eyes turned cold as she observed him from a dark corner. She, the young healer's apprentice, had been suspicious from the start. Something in his manner, the way he always seemed to vanish at critical moments. Unseen Malric had infiltrated their midst weeks ago, playing the role of a loyal follower, a necessary evil in their desperate quest. But his true goal was power, not the safety of the city, or even the defeat of the Shadow, but a rebellion of his own. In his mind, he had woven a treacherous plan to seize the relic, unleash the Shadow's full fury, and reshape the world in his image. He had been whispering to the others, planting seeds of doubt, exploiting their fears, and subtly persuading Myra to question Lyra's leadership. He knew that chaos was their greatest weakness, and he intended to use it. Now he had his chance. The moment of betrayal. That evening, as the group settled into uneasy rest, Malric slipped away from his position, moving silently through the shadows. His cloak blended with the darkness, no moon to light his way, only the faint glow of the city ruins. He approached Mira, who was sitting alone, nursing a wound from their recent battles. Her brow was furrowed with worry and confusion. "Mira," Malric whispered, leaning close. His voice was smooth, calculated. "You've seen how Lyra commands us, how she always keeps her guard up. Do you truly believe she's here to save us? Or does she only seek the relic for herself?" Mira looked up in surprise, startled by his sudden appearance. "What are you talking about? Lyra's our leader. She's risking everything for us." Malric's eyes flickered with a dangerous gleam. "Is she?" Or is she hiding her true purpose? I've noticed how she's secretive about her past, what she's really after. She's not telling us everything, and the relic might be better off in the right hands. I don't trust you, she whispered. Malric's smile twisted into something more sinister. Good. You're smart enough to see the truth. I, too, want the shadow to be unleashed. Only then can I become what I was meant to be. With that, he drew a small dagger, clutching it tightly. But first, I need to keep you quiet. Mira's eyes widened as she instinctively reached for her healing staff, ready to defend herself. Stay back. Malric lunged, dagger flashing in the moonlight, but Mira was quicker. She dodged and struck back with a burst of healing magic, aiming for his hand. Traitor, she spat, energy crackling in her fingertips. Malric hissed, retreating into the shadows. We'll see who's victorious, he whispered. The shadow is mine, whether you like it or not. The morning after, dawn crept over the ruined city, casting pallid light on the chaos. Mira was trembling, torn between fear and resolve. She knew Malric's treachery was only a part of a larger scheme, one that threatened their entire mission. She approached Lyra cautiously, who was meditating beside Alden's body, her expression unreadable. Lyra, Mira said quietly, there's something you need to know. Malric, he tried to kill me last night. Lyra's eyes snapped open, glowing faintly with the light of her ancestors. Her face hardened. Where is he? Mira pointed to the shadows beyond the camp. I saw him sneaking off, talking to himself. Lyra rose swiftly, her voice commanding. Find him, and keep a close eye on everyone. Someone among us isn't trustworthy. The confrontation, Lyra's group split into teams, combing the outskirts of the camp. The tension was thick, every crackle of dry leaves, every distant call of a bird, amplified by the nervous energy. Lyra, Mira, and two others tracked Malric's footprints leading into the debris-strewn alleyways. Suddenly, they spotted him, crouched beside a collapsed wall, clutching an object in his hand. Stop where you are, Lyra commanded, her staff raised defensively. Malric turned slowly, a sneer twisting his lips. Foolish children, he sneered. You think I'm the only one working in the shadows? Before anyone could react, he threw what looked like a small, glowing Orban, explosive vet, their feet. The blast threw dust and debris into the air, and the shockwave knocked them backward. Myra was quick, casting a protective shield just in time to deflect some of the shrapnel. Lyra fought to recover, her senses sharpening. Why are you doing this? She demanded, voice cold but held a hint of pain. We're all fighting the same enemy. Malric's laughter echoed through the ruins, cruel and triumphant. You still don't see, do you? The real enemy is the weakness, your trust. I refuse to live in a world enslaved by shadows. If I bring them out, I become the master of my destiny. With a final wicked smile, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving the team battered but unbroken. Aftermath. The seeds of chaos. Lyra looked at the debris, her jaw clenched. Her mind raced. She knew Malric was dangerous, unpredictable, and desperate. Her gut told her this betrayal was just the beginning. Mira approached her, eyes teary but determined. We can't let him win. We'll stop him, whatever it takes. Lyra nodded slowly. We have to. But this betrayal has only made the shadows more dangerous. We've lost trust, but we can't afford to lose hope. Alden's voice, faint but steady, came from behind. His words, a whisper, carried on the wind. Trust is our greatest weapon and our greatest weakness. We must be vigilant. Final reflection as the sun rose higher, casting a pale light over the ruined city. Lyra gazed into the distance, her faith fragile but unwavering. She knew the road ahead was perilous. The betrayal of Malric had only revealed a deeper truth. Enemies lurk where they least expect, even in the shadows of friends. And the fight for the soul of Ebonreach, and perhaps the entire world, was only beginning. Chapter 12. The Whispering Abyss. The air grew heavier beneath the city. Cloaked in darkness that seemed almost alive, oppressive, whispering presence that invaded every corner of the underground chambers they had entered. The labyrinth beneath Ebonreach was no longer merely a maze of stone and shadow. It was a living, breathing entity seeking to entrap their minds and bend their wills. Lyra clutched her pendant tightly, the glow of its moonstone illuminating her face with a faint, steady light. Her knuckles whitened as she gripped the chain, trying to anchor herself amid the swirling whispers that dared to invade her mind. This is only the beginning. The voice was faint, like a distant echo from the depths of a nightmare. The shadows play their game, and you are but pawns. You will succumb. She shook her head fiercely, which only made the whispers more insistent. She turned to the others, her voice trembling but resolute. Stay close. The whispers, they've already begun. Their voices are trying to break us apart. Alden, his wise eyes flickering with the faint light of his waning life, grimaced as he clutched his crumpled map. Tremors of fear shook his aged frame. They're not just whispers. They're temptations, hallucinations designed to reveal our deepest doubts and fears. We're vulnerable here. Behind him, Mira's breath was shallow, eyes darting, her face painted with anxiety. She was a healer, tasked with protecting her friends, but even she looked haunted by what she was experiencing. Suddenly, a flickering image appeared before them, a translucent figure of a young woman, her eyes bright yet sorrowful. It was Seraphine, their fallen hero, her form shimmering like a mirage. "Seraphine," Lyra whispered, her heart pounding. The apparition's lips moved, but no words came, only silent anguish. "Come closer," the spirit beckoned, voice echoing in their minds. "Find the truth beneath the lies. Only then can you escape this abyss." The Hall of Echoes, they moved cautiously into a wider chamber, their footsteps echoing unnaturally against the hollowed space. The walls pulsed softly, veins of black and gray intertwined like a living organism, an echo chamber crafted to amplify their fears and doubts. Lyra's hand trembled as she reached out, sensing a power beyond mortal comprehension. This was the Hall of Echoes, where shadows laid their trap, feeding on memories and regrets. As they entered, the whispers intensified. They swirled around them, attacking the mind with images and sounds that threatened to drown their resolve. Visions of loss. For Alden, the chamber warped into a scene of devastation, his family, long dead, calling out for help. The city was aflame, and he was powerless to save them. Images of his failure haunted him, his voice caught in the storm of memories. Tears welled in his eyes as he saw the faces of loved ones lost forever. "I should have fought harder," he thought, voice trembling. "I should have saved them." Yet, within the chaos, Lyra's voice cut through the illusions. "Alden, remember your purpose. These are lies that seek to break you. You are more than your regrets." The lies of the heart. Myra's turn was next. Her vision warped into a nightmare city destroyed, her actions blamed for the catastrophe. She saw her hands stained with blood, her own voice accusing her of failure. She clutched her staff desperately, struggling to stay grounded. Her mind whirled with doubts. Was she strong enough? Could she save anyone if she could not save herself? Lyra's voice, calm but commanding, cut through the cacophony. "You are more than your fears. Trust in your healing, in your hope. That is your true strength." Lyra's revelation. As the whispers sought to unravel Lyra's resolve, her own vision appeared, an ancestral memory, forebears whispering secrets about her bloodline. She saw herself standing at an altar, holding a shattered relic, very relic they sought to destroy the shadows. Her ancestors' faces bore a mixture of pride and anguish. "You carry the burden of our legacy," the voices said. "You alone can decide whether it will be a curse or salvation." Lyra clenched her fists, her voice rising above the din, her resolve solidifying. I am the guardian, but I choose to forge my own destiny, not be bound by the shadows of the past." The whispers subsided momentarily, leaving a resonant silence in the chamber. But the darkness was only subdued. It was patient, waiting for its next move. The heart of darkness. In the center of the chamber stood a black portala, swirling vortex of shadow, pulsating with malevolent energy. It was the source, the core of the shadows they faced. From the portal's depths, the whispers returned, twisted and darker than ever. "You will not escape. The truth is a lie. The darkness is eternal." Lyra moved closer, her pendant glowing brighter. She felt the weight of her bloodline pressing upon her, knowing that within that unfathomable abyss lies the seed of salvation or destruction. "What do you see in there?" Mira whispered, fear flickering in her eyes. Lyra hesitated, then answered softly, "The true heart of darkness, the lie and the truth. We must confront it to free ourselves." The whispers howled again, dissonant and relentless. But Lyra stood firm. Trusting her intuition, she reached out, prepared to confront whatever truths the abyss revealed. The revelation, suddenly, the portal pulsed violently, and inside, visions burst forth, memories, not her own, but parts of history long buried in the shadow's depths. The original curse born from betrayal and greed. Seraphine's demise, her sacrifice, a glimpse of the Shadow King's awakening. In flashes, Lyra saw her own lineage intertwined with the curse her ancestors. Heroes and villains bound in a cycle of darkness and light. "You cannot run from who you are," the voice echoed in her mind. "You are the sum of your choices, either the key to your salvation or its destroyer." The revelation struck her like lightning asterisk. She was both the heir to the curse and the potential savior. Emerging from the abyss, Lyra's body trembled, tears streaming down her face as she looked into the depths of the portal. Her resolve hardened anew. She would face the truth, no matter how dark it was, because hiding from it meant surrendering to despair. She took a breath, steadying herself. "This is only the beginning," she whispered, voice trembling with conviction. "We face the heart of darkness together." The whispers faded into silence, but Lyra knew, deep within her, that the true battle was still ahead, not just battling shadows, but confronting her own destiny and the truth buried in her blood. Chapter 13. The heart of darkness. The storm raged above Ebonreach, a relentless fury that matched the chaos unfurling beneath the surface. Dark clouds covered the sky, casting a pall over the ruined city, where shadows moved like living ink, creeping and twisting in the gloom. Lyra stood atop the remnants of the old tower, her staff clenched tightly in her hand, eyes fixed on the distant horizon. This was no ordinary storm, was a sign. The shadows they'd fought so hard to contain were stirring, again, more restless and deadly than ever. "They're awakening," Myra said softly, approaching her with the tattered remnants of an ancient scroll in her hands. Her voice trembled, but her eyes reflected fierce determination. "The ley lines, they're unstable. Whatever they're trying to summon, it's bigger than before." Lyra turned slowly, gripping her staff. "The ritual we found, it's completed. It'll tear apart the fabric of this realm. We have to stop it, no matter the cost." Mira nodded, clutching her talisman. "There's a place beneath the Cityon old underground temple connected to the ley lines. That's where they're supposed to perform the final part of the ritual. If we can get there in time, we might be able to cut it off." Lyra's heart hammered in her chest, but her voice was steady. "Then that's where we're headed." The descent into darkness, they moved quickly through the battered streets, shadows whispering around them in the darkness. Every corner seemed alive, waiting for a chance to strike. Their footsteps echoed in the silence, broken only by distant growls and the crackle of lightning. The entrance to the underground temple lay hidden beneath an abandoned well. Terran led the way, unsealing the ancient door with deft fingers. The tunnels stretched endlessly beneath the city, twisting and turning past crumbling walls and sealed chambers. The smell of damp stone and arcane residue filled the air. They knew every second mattered if the enemy reached the ritual site first. Everything they fought for could be lost. Suddenly, faint glowing runes appeared on the walls, original wards meant to contain the power that once was sealed here. But the runes were cracking, flickering, as if the very magic that maintained them was draining away. "Something's wrong," Mira whispered, eyes wide. "The ley lines, they're bleeding energy. Whoever is performing that ritual is overpowering the ward." The ground trembled beneath their feet, distant, ominous, like the heartbeat of the darkness itself. Shadows moved just beyond the flickering light, intangible, but felt an oppressive presence creeping closer. The ritual chamber, at last, they reached a vast chamber, the heart of the underground. An enormous stone altar sat at its center, covered in arcane symbols and dark runes. Above it, a swirling nexus of shadow and light spun the very core of the ritual. Figures cloaked in black robes circled around the altar, chanting in a language long forgotten. Their voices intertwined, rising and falling like the tide of an ancient ocean. They were summoning something horrific. The air grew thick with dark energy. Shadows flickered and coalesced into twisted figures, guardians of the ritual intent on stopping them. Terran readied his sword, eyes blazing. "We've no time to waste. We need to disrupt that ritual before it's too late. Lyra stepped forward, raising her staff. "Stay back," she commanded. "Let me handle this." With a flash of light, she invoked her most powerful protective spell, casting a shield around her companions as she advanced toward the altar. Myra and Ira prepared their magic, knowing their chance was fleeting. Suddenly, the cloaked figures turned, snarling. Their leader, a tall figure with glowing red eyes, lunged forward, lashed out like a serpent. Shadows exploded around him, tendrils reaching for Lyra. "Fools," he hissed, "you'll only delay the inevitable." Breaking the circle, Lyra's staff shimmered with divine energy. "You cannot unseal what has been bound by hope. We will stop you." Her magic clashed fiercely with the shadow's dark power. Mira unleashed a barrage of flames, hot enough to melt stone, while Ira conjured a wall of fiery light around them. The chamber trembled under the strain. The chant of the cloaked figures grew louder, desperate. They poured their will into completing their dark ritual. But Lyra fought with all her might, determined to break their grip. In a sudden surge, Mira managed to rip a rune from the altar's side, causing a burst of bright light to explode. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as their master's voice faltered. The shadow figure screamed in rage and pain, dissolving into nothing. The ritual's core flickered, wobbling, but not broken. Lyra knew they needed one final push. "Now," she shouted. Ira unleashed a fierce firestorm, enveloping the altar. Mira fueled her flames, and Lyra summoned a wave of pure, radiant energy, focusing all her strength on the nexus. Light and fire merged into a brilliant blast, tearing through the darkness like a tide. The shadow storm dissipated, vanished into the ether. The core of the ritual cracked, its dark energy seeping away. Silence fell. A fragile victory, exhausted, they slumped to the ground. The chamber's oppressive aura lifted, replaced by a fragile calm. The shadows had been thwarted for now. Lyra looked at her companions, breath heavy, but hearts lighter. "We stopped it," she said softly. "But the darkness is always lurking. We've only delayed what might come next." Terran clenched his fists. "We need to be ready. This isn't over yet." Mira nodded. "We've taken back control. But we must remain vigilant. The balance is fragile." As dawn broke outside, the team prepared to ascend from the depths. Though battered and battered, hope flickered anew in their eyes. The fight was far from finished, but they'd held the darkness at bay once more. The battle continues. Chapter 14. The sacrifice. The chamber was bathed in an eerie glow. The aftermath of their desperate battle with the Guardian. The air was thick with dust and the scent of burnt shadow. But amid the chaos and the lingering echoes of the creature's screams, Lyra felt a quiet, heavy weight pressing down on her chest. Alden's body was still on the ground, his eyes closed as if in peaceful sleep, except it was a sleep from which he would never wake. His sacrifice had bought them precious time, but at a terrible cost. The relic's glow flickered weakly, shadows still swirling at its base, threatening to erupt again. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Lyra knelt beside him, trembling. Her hands trembled as she reached out, gently closing his eyes, feeling the coldness in his veins. Her heart ached as grief flooded her. She had known Alden was old. The weight of centuries pressed heavily on his shoulders, but his death felt like losing a father figure, a guiding light. The others gathered around, their faces pale and exhausted. Mira's shoulders slumped, tears threatening to spill. Her hands clenched into fists. The group's only hope had been a sacrifice, a desperate, final act of bravery by the old scholar. But what haunted Lyra most was the knowledge that this act, wouldn't he be enough, was only a fragment of a greater darkness, waiting, swirling, just beyond reach. "Alden," she whispered, voice trembling, "your sacrifice wasn't in vain. Thank you." Her gaze drifted toward the relic. The remaining fragment of shadow, pulsating softly, the last gleam of the ancient evil they had managed to contain, but not destroy, a faint hope. There was no time for despair. Lyra took a shaky breath and looked around at her companions. Mira was trembling, clutching her healing staff, her eyes red-rimmed but fiercely determined. The others bore the marks of battle scratches, bruises, and exhaustion, but their spirits remained unbowed. The relic's glow intensified as Lyra touched it gently, her fingers feeling the last remnants of hope. She knew in that moment that they had a choice: accept the victory as Pyrrhic and retreat, or push forward, use this fragile victory as a springboard to face what was coming. Her mind flashed back to her ancestors' teachings, their power, their sacrifices, their hope. She would not let this be the end. "We can't stop now," she whispered, her voice steady now. "We faced darkness before. We can do it again." Mira looked up, her eyes glittering with resolve. "We owe it to him and to everyone who's fallen Seraphin, the others, to keep fighting." Lyra nodded, squeezing the relic gently. The surrounding shadows recoiled, swirling like a dying storm, but still threatening. The relic's light pierced the darkness, imbued with her resolve. Her voice rose, firm and clear. "We will finish what we started. The shadow's power is waning, and we will seal it away forever." The final stand. Suddenly, the chamber trembled, the dark energy growing restless. The shadows, sensing weakness, began to swirl more fiercely, tendrils whipping through the air. Lyra felt a surge of warmth within her, a divine, ancestral power flowing into her veins, fueling her determination. She lifted her staff high and began chanting an ancient incantation, a spell of binding and sealing, passed down through generations. The others joined her, their voices rising in unison, creating a chorus of hope and defiance. The relic glowed brighter, nearing its bursting point. Shadows screamed and writhed, trying to resist the magic. In that moment, Lyra saw her reflection shimmering in the relic's surface, her face illuminated by the radiant light. She saw her bloodline, the curse and potential intertwined, her legacy, her future. "Concentrate your energy here," she instructed. "Channel everything into this moment. This is where hope is forged." Mira aimed her healing staff at the relic, unleashing her most powerful spell of containment. Alden's sacrifice echoed in the climate, the magic that built bridges between hope and despair. The relic thrummed with raw energy, hints of gold and violet merging into a tempest of light. "Seal the darkness once and for all," Lyra shouted, voice fierce. The breaking point. Suddenly, the relic's light exploded outward in a blinding flash. Shadows recoiled with a scream that echoed like the cry of the dying. The chamber shuddered as the energy spiraled upward, forming a vortex, flinding, twistening to consume everything. Lyra felt her body trembling from exertion, her magic stretched to its limit. Mira's spells flared in tandem, desperately holding the relic's power steady, while the others fought to keep the shadows at bay. But then, the unthinkable happened. Malric, the treacherous cultist, burst into the chamber, wielding a dark blade crackling with shadow energy. His eyes burned with madness, not fear, but fierce intent. "You think you can seal the darkness?" he snarled, dark magic pouring from his staff. "No, I will harness it." He lunged toward the relic, aiming to shatter it and release the entire shadow, once and for all, cursing the world with chaos. "No," Lyra shouted, startled. She rushed forward, summoning forward every ounce of her magic, but knowing instinctively it was too late. Malric's staff collided with the relic, unleashing a surge of shadow that lashed out in an explosion of black and violet energy. The chamber was torn asunder, walls cracking, shadows rippling and flowing like a black tide. Lyra screamed, reaching for her staff, desperately trying to contain the damage. A final, fateful battle. The clash between Lyra's magic and Malric's shadow unleashed chaos in the chamber. Shadows poured out, lashing at everything, threatening to drown all hope. Lyra fought with fierce concentration, calling on her ancestors' strength. But the power of the relic was slipping Malric's greed and madness, threatening to plunge them all into eternal darkness. In that final moment, Mira's voice cut through the chaos. "Lyra, use the relic, push its power into him." Lyra hesitated only briefly then, with a scream of effort. She poured her magic into the relic, channeling all her hope, her pain, her determination. The relic flared with blinding intensity, white-hot energy rushing through her veins. She pointed her staff directly at Malric, voice trembling but unwavering. "Be damned," she shouted. "This is the end of your darkness." An explosion of light ripped through the chamber, destroying Malric's shadow and sealing away the remaining darkness into the relic's core. The shadows, now rendered overpowered and broken, hissed and writhed before dissipating into nothingness. The room finally fell silent. Aftermath, breathless, Lyra staggered back, her staff trembling in her grip. The relic's light dimmed to a faint glow as darkness was finally subdued, frozen in its prison. Alden's body lay still, a faint smile on his face. His sacrifice had bought them this victory, a hope that shone brighter than ever. Mira approached, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. Lyra looked around at her battered companions, wounded, exhausted, but alive. Her heart ached with the weight of what had been lost and what had been saved. She knelt beside the relic, whispering a prayer to her ancestors, to Alden and to Seraphina, prayer of hope, sacrifice, and renewal. "This is only the beginning," she murmured. "We have fought for our future, and we will continue to do so for as long as hope endures." Chapter 15. The flickering light, the chamber had fallen silent at last. The chaos of the battle fading into an eerie calm. The shadows were gone, sealed away into the relic's core by Lyra's final, desperate act. The room, scarred and fractured, still radiated a faint, golden, shimmering echo of hope that survived the darkness. Yet beneath that veneer of victory, a heavy silence lingered. Lyra slowly lowered her staff, her hands trembling with exhaustion. Her entire body ached, her muscles burned. Her mind was hazy from the strain of the magic burst and the final confrontations. She looked around at her companions, wounded, weary, but alive. The light in her eyes was flickering, fragile like a candle in the wind, but it burned brightly enough to see her purpose. In that moment, Lyra knew that not only had they succeeded in sealing the shadow, their journey was only beginning. The world outside still lingered in chaos, and the effects of their battle would echo for years to come. The price of victory, Alden's body lay quietly on the ground, war hero fallen. Mira knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling as she cloaked his body in a sacred blessing. The old scholar's eyes held a peaceful expression, as if he had finally found rest in the chaos he had fought so hard to contain. His sacrifice had been brutal but necessary, and his spirit seemed to linger in the room, watching over them. Lyra approached, her heart heavy with grief and resolve. She gently closed Alden's eyes, whispering words of farewell, feeling an immense weight settle upon her chest. Her voice cracked, but she spoke with the strength of her ancestors, echoing through her very bones. "Thank you, Alden. Rest now, you've earned it." Mira's sobs faded into silence as she clutched her staff tighter, chin trembling. The victory was hard won, but it was bittersweet. A faint spark of hope, Lyra, drawing a deep breath, steadied herself. She lifted her gaze to the relic's faint glow, still flickered like a dying star, a fragile beacon of hope. The shadows trapped within still threatened to burst free if mishandled, but their victory had proved that even the darkest darkness could be contained. Her voice was hoarse but determined. "We've sealed the shadow, but this is just a moment of respite. We must act now. The world needs healing. The scars will take time to mend." Mira wiped her eyes and nodded. What next? The darkness is gone, but the world is broken. Lyra looked over her companions, heroes, all scarred but unbroken. "We rebuild, we honor the sacrifices made, and we prepare. Because I know this victory is only the beginning of a new fight against remnants of darkness, against our fears, and against the shadows that lurk in every corner of the world." Her words echoed in the hollow chamber, a vow of hope in a land scarred by centuries of war and suffering. Rebuilding and reflection. The journey back to Ebonreach was a quiet one, filled with introspection and grief. They moved slowly, the landscape outside scarred but starting to heal. The city itself bore the marks of destruction, crumbling walls, burned out streets, and broken monuments, but life persisted. Lyra felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. She held on to her pendant, the symbol of her bloodline, her heritage. It pulsed softly against her chest, whispers of ancestral voices echoing within her. One evening, as they sat around a small campfire beneath a starlit sky, Lyra looked into the flames and shared her thoughts. She mused, "The shadows will try to return. We must stay vigilant. Our work isn't done." Mira looked at her, hope flickering in her eyes. "What do we do now? How do we start anew?" Lyra smiled faintly. "We teach hope, foster unity, and recover what has been lost. We rebuild not just stone and mortar, but trust and purpose. The world is not fixed overnight, it's something we tend daily." A new dawn as days passed, small acts of rebuilding began. They helped the wounded, tended to the damaged homes, and gathered survivors. Lyra worked tirelessly to reinforce the city's defenses and to heal the wounds of their people, both visible and unseen. Yet, beneath these efforts, there was a quiet sense of vigilance. The shadows of doubt and fear still lingered, whispering reminders of how close they had come to destruction. In the mornings, Lyra often visited the ruins of the old library, her ancestors' sanctuary, and sought wisdom in ancient texts. She knew, deep down, that darkness had a way of waiting patiently, always lurking just beyond the light. But she also knew that hope was stronger than despair. They continued to believe in it. The legacy of sacrifice. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizons, Lyra gathered her companions in the steps of what was once the city's grand plaza. They lit a small ceremonial fire symbol of renewal. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady and clear as she addressed them all. Today, we honor those who gave everything and countless others who fought for our future. Their sacrifices remind us that hope is born from courage, and that even in the darkest night, a single flickering candle can light the way. Mira placed a small bouquet of wildflowers at the foot of a stone memorial land inscription carved into the rock, bearing the names of the fallen. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, whispering a prayer for their spirits. She pictured Alden's kind face, the heroism of Seraphine, and the countless lives forever changed by the darkness. Their sacrifices, she knew, were seeds sown in the soil of hope. In that sacred moment, the world seemed to pulse with renewed vitality, fragile yet persistent flicker of dawn. The road ahead, standing amid her companions, Lyra looked toward the horizon. The faint glow of dawn was breaking. The sky was painted with streaks of gold and pink, a promise of a new day. But we must remain vigilant, she said softly. The shadow may be sealed, but its echo can linger. We will rebuild, yes, but we must also prepare for what might come next. Mira nodded, her eyes shining with newfound purpose. We are not done, not yet. But together, we can face whatever challenges lie ahead. Alden's spirit, though lost to them, had imbued them with a renewed resolve. The shadows had been cast back, but their flickering light symbolized resilience. Hope born from sacrifice continued to burn in their hearts. And so, beneath the endless sky, the survivors of Ebonreach stepped into a future uncertain but filled with promise, carrying forward the memories of sacrifice, the lessons of darkness, and the unyielding belief that even the smallest light could illuminate the deepest night. Chapter 16. The rising shadow, the oppressive gloom, pressed down on Ebonreach. Rain pounding against shattered stones and twisted alleyways. The city lay battered silent, save for the distant rumble of thunder, yet beneath the surface. Darkness stirred with relentless hunger. Lyra gazed over the ruins from what remained of the tower, her mind racing with urgency. She clenched her fists tightly, feeling the weight of her responsibility. The signs were clear. The shadows, which had once seemed contained, were awakening once more ferocious and cunning than ever before. "They're waking," Mira whispered beside her, her voice trembling yet sharp with resolve. She held an ancient scroll in her trembling hands, its ink faded but legible. The ley lines, they're unstable. The ritual, whatever they're trying to summon, it's more than just shadows now. Something darker, something older. Lyra's gaze darkened. If they succeed, everything we fight for will be lost. We have to stop it before it's too late. Mira nodded frantically. The old underground temple beneath the city, the one connected to the ley lines. It's where they re-performing the final part of the ritual. If we can reach it in time, perhaps we can interrupt them. Without hesitation, Lyra gathered her Alistairn, Ira, Myra, and others fighting to preserve what little remained of their home. Their footsteps echoed through the rain-slicked streets as they moved swiftly toward their destination, hearts pounding with dread and determination. The descent into darkness, the entrance to the underground, was concealed beneath an ancient well, long forgotten. Terran expertly unsealed the hidden door, revealing a tunnel that stretched into darkness. Their torchlight flickered weakly against damp stone walls as they descended into the depths. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of mold and old magic. Shadows danced along the tunnel edges, seemingly alive and waiting. Every step they took felt like edging closer to an abyss, one where the very fabric of reality grew thin and tattered. Rumbling beneath their feet signaled that the darkness was stirring, feeding off the disturbed ley lines. Mira whispered a spell, her hands glowing softly. "The magic here is unstable," she said, eyes wide. "Whatever they're doing, it's tearing at the seams of the ley network." The tunnel curved onward, leading to a colossal chamber, the heart of the ritual site. Inside, a large altar pulsed with dark energy, shining with unnatural light. Menacing figures cloaked in shadows performed their strange rites around it, chanting in ancient, twisted languages. Suddenly, the air grew colder. Shadows seeped from the corners, coalescing into monstrous shapes. Beings of darkness, with jagged claws and glowing eyes, advanced, snarling fiercely. The team readied weapons and spells, knowing every second counted. The ritual in progress, Lyra stepped forward, raising her staff high. Her voice rang out, commanding and steady. "Stop." The shadow priests turned, their leader a tall figure with piercing red eyes sneering. "Fools, you think we're afraid of your light? This realm belongs to chaos. We're merely awakening what's ours." They continued their chant, dark magic swirling and twisting in the air. The ley lines beneath trembled as the energy grew. The ritual was nearing completion. They didn't interfere. Soon, the shadows would be unleashed fully. Lyra darted forward, unleashing a brilliant burst of light that cut through the darkness. Myra summoned flames, casting them in a blazing torrent toward the altar. Ira's fiery magic danced wildly around them, forming a protective barrier. But the Shadow Priest's leader laughed a cold, hollow sound. "You are too late." The ground beneath their feet shuddered violently. Shadows, tendrils shot out, trying to seize their prey. Lyra fought back, keeping the light alive, while Mira's flames momentarily scorched the dark energies. Stopping the darkness, Lyra spotted the core, the swirling vortex of black energy pulsating at the center of the altar. If they could destroy it, they'd break the ritual and contain the shadows. "Focus on the core," Lyra shouted. Mira and Ira poured their magic into the vortex, merging fire and light in a desperate attempt to unravel the dark hub. The Shadow Priest's leader fought fiercely to restore the ritual, summoning more shadows. But the team pressed on, their combined magic tearing at the heart of the darkness. With a deafening crack, the vortex erupted in a blinding flash. Shadows shrieked as their anchoring anchor was shattered. The dark energy dissipated into the ether, and the ritual ground to a halt. The chamber fell silent. The oppressive weight lifted, leaving only a faint shimmer of residual magic. The threat had been thwarted for now. Hard-won victory. Breathing heavily, Lyra wiped sweat from her brow. They had succeeded in stopping the ritual, but she knew better than to rejoice. Darkness was never truly gone yet, only slumbered, waiting for its next moment to strike. "The ley lines are weakened," Mira said softly, her voice tinged with worry. "We've bought ourselves some time, but this isn't over. The shadows will return, stronger. We must prepare." Terran nodded grimly. "We've won the battle, but the war isn't finished. We need to rebuild, to strengthen our defenses. Everything still hangs in the balance." Ira looked toward the pale sky, a faint smile forming. Today, hope survived. That's what matters. But we have to stay vigilant if we want to survive what's coming. As they emerged from the depths, the rain eased and a fragile dawn broke over the ruins. Though battered, they clung to hope, knowing that they had delayed chaos, but never eliminated it. The fight against darkness was eternal, but so long as they stood together, the light would endure. Chapter 17. The shadows wake. The sun's first lights spilled over. Ebonreach, with a promise softly illuminating the battered ruins and wounded hearts of those who survived the battles beneath. Yet, despite the dawn's gentle glow, dark memories clung to the streets like shadows refusing to retreat. The city, scarred but resilient, was awakening to the realization that their victory was only a fragile truce with the darkness still lurking in hidden corners of their world. Lyra stood atop the remnants of the ancient temple, gazing out over the city. Her staff rested loosely in her hand, yet her mind was miles away, tormented by visions woven from both hope and dread. The truths they uncovered in the vault had unveiled a deeper, more persistent enemy, one that still hunted the shadows beyond their reach. Mira approached quietly, her face etched with concern and resolve. Lyra, do you think we truly understand what we're facing? The prophecy, the vault, the shadows, everything feels like just the beginning. Lyra turned, meeting her companion's gaze. It is only the beginning. The darkness is cunning, and it will not be defeated with light alone. We must be prepared for what's to come, more than just battles, but the fight for understanding and hope. Mira nodded. The relic held secrets we never imagined, and the vault's truths. They could change everything. But I fear the shadows have already begun to stir deeper than we thought. Lyra's expression hardened. Then it's time we listen with more than just our ears. We need to find the root of this curse, the heart of the shadow, and break it once and for all. Gathering the pieces, their journey back to Ebonreach's citadel was fraught with tension. The city was healing, but the wounds ran deep. Rumors spread that remnants of shadow had infiltrated even the most hidden parts of the city, whispering in shadows, waiting for another chance. Lyra and her companions worked tirelessly, scouring ancient archives, consulting old scrolls, and questioning elders who remembered the city's earliest legends. One thing was clear: the shadow's origins stretched farther back than anyone had dared imagine. Entangled in ancient betrayals and forgotten wars. Finally, Mira uncovered a legend, an ancient prophecy inscribed in a long-forgotten manuscript. When the dust of ages settles and the ash of betrayal cools, the shadow will return, born anew from the depths of memory. Only by confronting the darkness within can the dawn truly rise. Lyra's heart sank at the words. This meant that their work was far from over, perhaps even more complex than they had feared. We must go beneath the city again, she said, her voice steady but tense. Deeper than the vault we found yesterday. There is something, buried something, that predates even the oldest legends. Mira looked uncertain. Are we really ready for what lies beneath? I fear it might be more than we can handle. Lyra's gaze grew resolute, We have no choice. If we are to end this curse, we must face it head-on. Journey to the hidden depths. The city's underground passages led them once more into a realm of darkness and forgotten memories. They navigated twisting tunnels, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and secrets long sealed away. As they ventured deeper, the shadows grew dense, whispering words of despair and temptation. Lyra felt every step reverberate with ancestral whisperings, tales of those who had come before. Some fallen to their own doubts, others betrayed by the darkness itself. Finally, they reached a sealed cavern, ancient monument built from not-cracked stone, covered with webs and moss. At its center, a stone altar bore carvings depicting a scene of betrayal, conflict, and a great uprising long buried in the annals of time. Inscriptions decorated the chamber, warning of the dangers of disturbing what had been long hidden. Lyra hesitated, but could feel the overpowering urge to find the truth. "We need to unlock this," she said softly, raising her staff and channeling her ancestral magic. Mira leaned close, her eyes scanning the symbols. "This is a seal buried by the old guardians, an ancient ward against the darkness, but it's deteriorating. If we push too hard, it could release something far worse." Lyra's hands glowed with energy, and with a deep breath, she began the incantation. The symbols on the altar shimmered, and the seal weakened, cracking as ancient magic burst forth. A void opened before them, a swirling maw of shadow and storm. Beyond it, Lyra glimpsed streaks of chaos, visions of a conflict long past, a war where the darkness was born from betrayal and human greed. Suddenly, a figure stepped into the chamber, the spirit of an ancient protector, cloaked in shadow and light, eyes burning with a fierce, sorrowful fire. "You seek what should remain hidden," it said in a voice echoing with centuries of pain. "The root of the shadow's curse lies beneath, buried with those who betrayed their kin. If you disturb it, chaos will rise anew, unstoppable and eternal." Lyra stepped forward, cautiously. "We don't seek chaos, we seek understanding. To break the curse, we need to confront what's buried here, not run from it. Then see what lies beneath. But beware, knowledge can be a double-edged sword. Will you carry the burden of truth, or be consumed by it?" With that, the figure dissolved into shadows, leaving them to stare into the abyss. The heart of betrayal, Lyra approached the opening cautiously. A sense of familiarity swirled in her mind, memories of her ancestors' stories, speaking of a betrayal rooted in greed and ambition. A betrayal that had fractured their people and cursed the land. As she stepped closer, a swirling storm of memories exploded around her, visions of long-dead figures betraying one another, promises broken, alliances shattered. She saw her ancestors fighting themselves, driven by greed and fear. The truth was clear. The Shadow-esque curse was born from betrayal, an act of treachery that had rippled through generations, fueling the darkness even now. Lyra's voice trembled, but her resolve grew stronger. The past will not hold us hostage. We will confront it, and we will heal the wounds of history. Myra reached out, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. We must be strong enough to face that pain. With renewed commitment, the group descended deeper, guided by ancestral echoes and the silent hopes of those who had suffered long ago. The return and the reckoning. Emerging from the depths, the group carried with them dark knowledge, the truth of the betrayal and the source of the Shadow's evil. But it was only part of the puzzle. Their journey to that core revealed a stark reality. Their fight was not just against a curse, but against human treachery and the dark choices anyone could make. Lyra gazed at the horizon where the sun now shone, brighter, less a promise of salvation than a challenge ahead. The shadows still lurked, and their victory was but a pause. "We have uncovered the past," she declared. "Now we must forge our future, one built on truth, courage, and unity. Only then can we ensure that the darkness never rises again." Her companions nodded, hearts steeled for the road ahead, knowing well that the true battle, the one for hope, was still to come. Chapter 18. The Last Stand. The last stand. The wind howled through the ruined city as darkness gathered once more. The sky, once ominously cloudy, swirling storm clouds, veiling the stars. Lyra gazed over the battered walls of Ebonreach, her heart pounding with a sense of foreboding. They had fought hard to hold what remained, but she knew the greatest threat was still looming. Deep beneath the city, hidden tunnels led to the ancient underground temple, unholy site where the shadows were attempting their final, most dangerous ritual. If completed, it would open a gateway to the void, unleashing chaos on every realm. "We have to stop them," Mira said urgently, clutching her worn scroll as she often did. Her eyes flashed with determination. "The ley lines are fraying. If they succeed, everything our world, our hopes, will be swallowed by darkness." Lyra nodded grimly. "This is it. The last chance. We can't fail." A squad of fighters assembled behind them, weapons drawn, ready for the descent. Their faces were grim, yet resolute. They knew they were heading into the heart of the darkness, the underground temple. Tunneling down into the forgotten depths, the air grew colder and thicker with ancient magic. Shadows slithered along the edges of the stone walls, whispering secrets and threats. Their footsteps echoed in a haunting rhythm, faster and heavier with each step. As they reached the chamber of the ritual, a terrifying sight greeted them. Blood-red runes shimmered on the walls, and a swirling portal of shadow spun above, a fractured altar ready to release the unthinkable. Priests, clad in black robes, stood in a circle, chanting in dark tongues. Their words seemed to vibrate through the very air, summoning a monstrous force. "We're too late," Ira hissed, eyes wide with fear. The energy crackled ominously, promising catastrophe. Lyra raised her staff defiantly. "No, we stop this now." Her voice thundered over the chamber. The priests turned, snarling and raising their hands. Shadows poured from their fingertips like black ink, lashing out at her and her companions. "You cannot interfere," the leader of the priests hissed, eyes blazing with hatred. "The gateways cannot be sealed again. This time, the darkness shall be unbound." The battle for the future magic clashed fiercely. Mira summoned her flames, creating a blazing barrier as Lyra focused her light to weaken the shadows. Ira's fiery blasts pushed into the darkness, illuminating the chaos. The portal pulsed ominously, threatening to rip apart the fabric between worlds. Terron fought off shadow creatures, trying to swarm them with swift, brutal strikes. Lyra saw it. The heart of the ritual core of swirling black energy hovering just above the altar. If they could destroy it, they would stop the unfolding nightmare. "Focus all our magic on that core," she commanded. Her staff shone brighter as she channeled her power. Mira and Ira poured themselves into the task, flames and light merging into a torrent of unstoppable energy. The dark core trembled, swirling faster as shadows hissed in fury. "It's weakening," Mira shouted, a triumphant note in her voice. But the ritual's priests fought desperately, summoning shadowy tendrils to defend their master's work. Their chants grew more frantic, trying to push the darkness back into its prison. Lyra pushed forward, unleashing her purest light. "It's now or never." The core cracked, exploding in a blinding flash of light. Shadows screeched as their hold was shattered. The portal dissolved into nothingness, and the dark priests were consumed by their own magic, vanishing into thin air. The aftermath. Silence fell. The chamber was a ruinate, reeked of magic and despair. But the looming threat had finally been broken. Lyra slumped to her knees, exhausted but relieved. Beside her, Mira caught her breath, clutching her chest. Ira's flames flickered weakly, and Terran looked around, cautiously, wary of hidden dangers. "We did it," Lyra whispered, stopped the last of it. But her voice was tinged with worry. The damage was done. The ley lines were fragile, and the darkness had left scars that wouldn't heal overnight. "This isn't the end," Myra said softly, staring at the broken portal. "They'll come back." stronger. We have to prepare. This was only a warning. Terran's voice was steady. We'll rebuild, recover, and defend. Because we know the truth now. Darkness will always lurk, waiting for its moment to strike again. Lyra looked at her companions, battle-worn but unbroken, felt a cautious spark of hope ignite. Perhaps, after everything, they still had a chance. As dawn's first light seeped into the chamber, they stepped out into the shattered city, ready to face whatever darkness might come next. The fight for their world was far from over, but they would stand strong. Chapter 19. A new dawn. The dawn broke softly over Ebonreach, its light creeping through the fractured remnants of the city like a gentle promise. For the first time in what felt like ages, the air was clear of the oppressive shadows that had once threatened to engulf everything. The city, scarred yet resilient, began to stir with cautious hope, people emerging from their shelters, tending to the wounded and looking outward with tentative optimism. Lyra stood atop the highest tower of the citadel, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She held her staff loosely in her hand, her heart a tumult of exhaustion, relief, and above all hope. Behind her, Myra and the others gathered, their faces marked by scars, both visible and unseen, but their spirits alight with the fire of survival. The victory had been costly, and the road ahead uncertain. Still, they had faced darkness and survived. The shadows had been pushed back, but Lyra knew well that this was just a pause in a longer battle. The cost of victory. Lyra's thoughts drifted momentarily to Alden, the mentor, father figure, and hero who had sacrificed everything to protect them. His spirit had returned to the ancestral realm, returning only to guide, to watch over from the silent depths beyond mortal sight. Her eyes welled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. Tears wouldn't mend the scars, nor could they replace what had been lost. Instead, she lifted her chin and looked to her companions. Today, she began softly, we step into a new chapter, not just as survivors, but as the guardians of hope. We've uncovered so much, fought against the darkness and won, but the fight isn't over. We must rebuild trust, rebuild the city, and heal both what's broken inside and outside. Mira stepped closer, her voice steady and full of conviction. We've seen what lies beneath the deepest roots of the curse and the chaos. We now know the truth of our past and how to prevent it from destroying us again. But we must remain vigilant. The others nodded, their faces etched with fatigue, yet lit with a newfound purpose. The shadows had tested them, revealed their weaknesses, and taught them invaluable lessons, the greatest of which was that hope, when nurtured and shared, could conquer even the darkest night. A time for reflection as the city's people began to emerge from their shelters. Lyra and her companions moved among them, listening, advising, healing. They knew and felt that the true victory resided not in the battles fought, but in the bonds forged through hardship. That evening, gathered around a modest fire in the ruins of the old town square, Lyra addressed her friends and allies. "We have faced the shadows, uncovered their secrets, and found the strength to stand against them," she said. "But now, we must focus on the future, on building a world where light is stronger than darkness. That's our promise, and it's the most precious magic of all." Mira looked into the flames, her expression peaceful yet contemplative. "We've learned that hope must be nurtured like a fragile seed. It is born from sacrifice and trust, but also from the knowledge that darkness always lurks waiting for the moment we falter." Alden's spirit, watching silently, seemed to smile, an invisible presence that confirmed their resolve. The balance must be maintained. His voice echoed softly in Lyra's mind. Rebuilding the heart of the city. Over the following weeks, the people of Ebonreach worked tirelessly. Earth and stone, wood and cloth, everything needed mending. The university's library was restored, and ancient texts were copied, studied, and preserved seeds of wisdom to nurture the next generation. The town square, scarred but resilient, became a symbol of unity and hope. Lyra threw herself into her work. She used her magic to strengthen the ley lines that crisscrossed the city, reinforcing the bonds that held it together and protecting it from future upheavals. Alongside her, Mira led initiatives to train new mages, teaching them to understand and respect the delicate balance of magic, so that they might avoid unleashing chaos unwittingly. In quiet moments, Lyra visited the city's oldest shrine place where her ancestors' spirits were honored. She offered her thanks and prayers, knowing that their sacrifices had paved the way for the dawn of a new era. A ceremony of remembrance one evening. The city's leaders gathered in the central square to remember those they loved and lost. An ornate stone monument had been erected engraved with the names of all who had fallen. Candles flickered across the memorial as families, friends, and survivors paid homage. Lyra's voice trembled as she read their names aloud, her heart swelling with gratitude and sorrow. "Seraphine," she whispered softly, "a healer and a friend. Your courage saved us all." She paused before listing Alden's name, her throat tight. "And Aldenauer, guiding light, whose sacrifice bought us this chance for a new beginning." A chorus of whispered prayers and silent tears rose through the crowd. The city mourned, but it also celebrated, remembering the courage that had carried them through the darkest nights. And in that moment, Lyra understood that remembrance was the seed of hope, keeping alive the flame that shadows could never fully extinguish. The light of the future, as days turned into weeks, the city gradually returned to life. Markets bustled, children played in the streets, and scholars debated beneath open sky, old city reborn from its ashes. Lyra and her friends, now seasoned and wiser, knew that their victory had come at a steep price, but also carried invaluable lessons. They understood that darkness would always try to find new cracks and weaknesses both within and beyond themselves. But they also knew that hope, forged through sacrifice, trust, and unity, was a powerful shield. It was their legacy, their gift, and their burden. One evening, approached by whispers of a new horizon, Lyra addressed her companions once more. "We have reclaimed our home. We've uncovered truths buried in time. But the real work begins now, the work of keeping that light alive. We will teach others, stand guard, and guard the fragile threads that hold our world together." Her voice was steady, filled with conviction, echoing the eternal promise that darkness would never wholly claim the day. A new dawn. And as the first light of dawn stretched across the sky, Lyra looked out over her city. The sun's rays touched every corner, warming stones, awakening life symbolic of hope's resilience. The shadows had nearly claimed her world, but hope had fought back. It had been not just a gift, but a weapon magic rooted in sacrifice, unity, and unwavering belief. For the first time in many years, Lyra felt a deep sense of peace. But she knew well, peace was precious but fragile. It needed tending, nurturing, and courage to defend. She turned from the window, raising her staff, once more a symbol of hope in her trembling hand. And with her, her companions, guardians of hope, champions of dawn, prepared to face whatever came next together. The future was uncertain, but they would face it united as keepers of the light, forever vigilant against the return of shadows. Epilogue. Echoes of light. Many years had passed since the shadows had been cast back from the heart of Ebonreach. The city, once scarred by chaos and treachery, had blossomed into a thriving hub of hope and renewal. Its streets bustled with life. Scholars debated beneath open skies, and children's laughter echoed through the marketplaces, a melody of resilience and rebirth. Lyra, now older but still fierce with a spark of unwavering resolve, often found herself standing atop her favorite tower. From this vantage point, she watched over her city's cautious streets, its vibrant marketplace, the sprawling library where new generations learned the truths of their past. Her staff, worn but steady, rested against her shoulder, etched with runes of protection and hope. She knew better than anyone that darkness might never be gone forever. But she also understood that the strength of their unity, the bonds forged through sacrifice, was their greatest weapon. "Hope endures," she whispered softly, the voice carried by the breeze. And so must we, guardians of the dawn. Her mind wandered to those who had given everything, Eldin, Seraphine, countless brave souls whose sacrifices had paved the way. Their spirits, she believed, watched over her, eternal flames guiding her through every challenge. A time of growth. In the years that followed, Mira became a revered teacher, passing on her knowledge to students eager to understand the delicate dance between magic and morality. Her eyes sparkled with wisdom and warmth, her faith in growth rooted in the scars of their struggle. Remember, she often said to her students, the greatest magic lies not in spells or relics, but in hope and compassion. That's what binds us, all past, present, and future. The city's elders, inspired by their resilience, established councils dedicated not only to guarding the ley lines, but also to fostering understanding between different peoples, mages, warriors, farmers, and artisans, all working together to weave a tapestry of unity. Lyra's own efforts gradually shifted from battle readiness to mentorship, her connection to her ancestors guiding her steps as she trained new protectors' guardians, whose duty was not only to defend, but to foster hope. A legacy of light one bright morning. A festival arose, an annual celebration honoring the courage and sacrifices of those who had fought and scarified for peace. Streets were decorated, songs sung, and stories told of the shadows that almost consumed them, all land of the hope that had brought them back to the light. Children played in the squares, gleefully pretending to wield magic, while elders recounted tales of the old days, stories of darkness and light, of betrayal turned to perseverance. In the center of it all, Lyra stood holding her staff, watching the scene unfold. Her eyes, warm and filled with gentle pride, took in the energy of hope alive in every face. We are the keepers of this light, she thought, a smile lingering on her lips, and it is our duty to ensure it never fades. The ongoing vigil. Though peace had settled like a fragile blossom, Lyra knew that darkness could always return early or late, in different forms or from unseen angles. The shadows had seeped into every corner of history and human heart, waiting quietly for moments of weakness. She often visited the old temple-lit stones, now covered with moss, its sacred relics carefully preserved, remembering the prophecy that warned of the cycle of rise and fall. Her ancestors' echoes reminded her that hope was not a static thing, but an ongoing struggler light that needed nurturing, understanding, and courage. We must keep watch, she would say, quietly to herself. Light is most precious when it's brightest against the darkness. That's when it's hardest to see and when it's needed most. And so, Lyra's life continued focus not on the shadows of the past, but on the promise of tomorrow. A quiet promise as the sun set over Ebonreach, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Lyra returned to her tower, gazing upward at the stars. Each one was a reminder of ancient guardians, of hope's endurance, and of the endless cycle of night and dawn. She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the whispers of her ancestors' testaments of resilience and trust they left behind. Then, the world was safe, for now, but the true victory was not in banishing darkness entirely, but in understanding its nature, in forging bonds that could withstand the storm. And as the stars shone brightly above, she knew deep in her soul that hope would always find a way. The shadows may return, but so long as there is light hand, so long as brave hearts stand to protect, if the dawn will never be fully eclipsed.